Welcome back to Glow Up or Get Out. I'm half the podcast, Sam.
I'm the other half, Mel.
And today we are here to talk about the art of being alone. Alone. SpongeBob. So whether you're single or in a relationship or a situationship, whatever your situation is, I feel like there is an art to being alone and not lonely.
Yep.
And we're just going to talk about it today.
Yeah.
We're going to be for real.
So I think to start off, so we're going to, like we said, separate the two between single and then as a partnership or as a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
But to start us off, I think it's important to recognize the difference between being alone and being lonely.
Mm-hmm.
Being lonely, so the major overarching difference is that one is a choice and the other one is more of like the feeling of being lack of connection and like stimulation and like that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So being lonely is like feeling isolated and isolating yourself from others and genuinely like being apart from others, lacking, like you said, like socializing or just connecting. And then being alone is intentional time that you like go within with yourself and, spend moments where you can really reflect on yourself and with no other like noise around you, whether that's like actual noise or that's just like environmental noise or societal noise, just like being with yourself and no other opinions really.
Yeah, which I think we'll talk about more of what we used to think alone time was.
Yeah.
And what we are actively trying to actually do now. So in terms of being single, we're just going to use me as a case study, I guess.
The case study of being alone.
Yes.
Finding
peace.
Finding peace in alone. The art of being alone.
Yeah.
And not feeling lonely.
Yes, which is honestly an art and a balance. And you got to have your support system in order to do that. Because being single does not mean you're alone.
Yeah.
Like, ever. I mean, even if you're in a relationship that's maybe not good for you, you're still never alone, even though that person makes you feel lonelier.
And that's what I was going to say.
Than anyone else.
People who are, what is that quote when like some people feel the loneliest when in a crowd or whatever?
Mm-hmm.
It's like it really stems from like within of like whether or not you're feeling fulfilled and loved and connected, then you won't feel
lonely.
Lonely.
You're literally, I guess lonely. Technically, you could be alone physically, but you guys get what I'm saying. Let's just go through the phases, I guess, of said single time and kind of just like, the cycle of grief and finally getting to the balance. So personally for me, we started with some anger, crying, and grief, which depending on your situation, I think regardless, those are some very valid feelings. Anger at the person, yourself, the world, the situation. You can be angry at a lot of things. Crying, obviously, grief, because you're mourning the loss of your old life or the person that you were with.
The life that you thought.
Yeah, the future you thought you were going to have. So I think like the first phase is definitely rooted in like still the past.
Yeah.
Like you're very much like, eek. Next, we classily titled this, I'm a whore. And that's just like, you're out here, you're in the streets and you're like, fuck this. I'm going to be in the streets and I'm going to be on dating apps. I'm going to get validation from men or women, people in general.
Yeah.
And you're just out here looking for outside validation, basically.
And that definitely obviously stems from the anger, crying, and grief. Where it's morphed into new coping. Like the coping is finding someone else to stimulate, someone else to fill the void. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Which, all of this in different time periods for different people. Like this whole process could take someone years. Next phase after that, you kind of hit a point where you're like, how good is this validation really making me feel? You're like, let's slow down. Like maybe I was talking to too many people, or maybe the apps just aren't it, or maybe I'm going on too many dates with people who don't deserve my time. Whatever. After that, I think you realize your worth, and you kind of actively make decisions to cherish your alone time. And I feel like, me personally, I think, I don't know if these things are like all over the place, but I think at the beginning I was very much about my alone time, and I was okay with that. But then I like still reverted and went back to like the I'm gonna be a whore, I need validation, and all the other steps. But I feel like I still valued alone time a lot the entire time I was single. And then there was like a small blip of like, validation's fun, hee hee. And then I got to the point where I was like, I'm fucking tired of this.
Like, it doesn't actually feel good.
No,
it doesn't fulfill any cups.
It literally feels nothing. The next day I wake up and I'm like, that was stupid and boring and annoying.
Yeah.
So basically, when you're single, I think you just need to value your actual alone time and stick to it, and just knowing your worth on who deserves to have time with you.
Yeah.
Because when you're single, most of your time is probably going to be alone time. So it's not really like you have to schedule as much, unless you have like a super fucking busy life, which maybe you do. But I still think it is nice to like schedule in weekly, either like I'm gonna journal and like listen to my favorite new album, whatever the case is.
Yeah. In being alone, and this goes for being in a relationship or not, but like there is 4 things that we, based on an article we read, but also we agree with, it's very much true, that we feel come up with having those in alone, like intentional times when you can really process things on your own and create a world within yourself versus like looking out into the outer world.
I think another thing too is when you're single, you may not even be seeking validation from other romantic partners. You be seeking validation from friends,
from anybody,
siblings, and being like, please validate the choices I'm making as a single person so that I feel good about them.
Mm-hmm. And I think that could stem from the fact that there's not enough like internal
alone time
and there's another one that I just thought about, but anyway. Okay. One of them is enhances creativity. So
the benefits of alone time, right?
Yeah. So these are the 4 benefits, but I feel like we might just like talk into more, but
right.
It enhances creativity. So not only is this just like creating a more open space that like wanders freely, but you're not really like focusing on anybody else's types of like creativity or thoughts or opinions. And so you have a more free flowing mind that can create outside of like the
whatever
world.
You think,
yeah. And I think that's even like true besides like friends and family and relationships. Even just being on like social media, if you just step away from those types of things, you can have like a better understanding of what your creativity looks like and bring actually something new to the table instead of like regurgitating the same shit over and over again. You know? Second one is it recharges your brain. So this is kind of similar to the first one, where it allows like space for clear thinking and also just to be like more present on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I can easily see how like when I spend more time alone, my thoughts are a lot less clouded. Like if I journaled about whatever I was feeling, I can resolve that by myself.
By yourself.
And not need to be like, hey, what do you think?
Yeah. And then also like when you can like self-soothe and self-process these things, when you're like out into the world, you're excited to hear from somebody else, you're excited to be with this other person, and it's like more of a I'm like, oh, I'm actually here, versus like if you're constantly stimulated by otherness and like everything outside of you, there's like this like desensitization of like being with other people that like you're kind of just like in autopilot versus
like you're just hearing things, you're just seeing things.
Exactly. So like if you're spending the time alone, then it becomes like an intentional time to process the world, your inner world, and then you're like, okay, I can go with a fresh set of eyes, fresh set of ears out into the world to experience some new stuff, you know?
Yeah.
The next one, which we've kind of touched on, is increasing self-sufficiency. Like we said, it gives you time to self-reflect, and it gives you the freedom to form your own opinions, independent of others, the judgment of others. So this is like also with what you said, like creating your own solutions and problem solving.
Yeah. I feel like it's a lot easier to like text 5 different friends or something, or your partner or whatever, and be like, what do you think about, like, I mean, small things, you know, like, what picture should I post on Instagram?
Yeah.
Like, picking 5 people, and it's like, I should just pick. Like,
Yeah.
why am I asking so many people for these things? Or like, hey, something I could quickly Google, but I'm going to ask you instead, or, you know, like, whatever. Just, I don't know. I can't think of examples, but something like that.
Yeah.
And yeah, you just end up being like, I can do shit on my own. And that just builds confidence.
It does build confidence. You're right.
Mm-hmm.
And I also feel like self-sufficiency can also go beyond like just doing things for yourself, but even just like self-soothing, like that's also self-sufficient, where like you can literally calm your own nervous system down and you're not needing anybody else to like you said, validate your opinion or validate your actions or behaviors. Like if you're scared to sit with yourself about what you've done.
Not what you've done, like it's already a bad thing.
I mean, whether it's a good or bad, like if you're scared though, then it has to be bad, right? Like, or it at least it should feel, I feel like it would be feeling bad as a choice, because you can't sit with yourself and be like, all right.
Like, why did I go back to my ex? Or why did I reach out to that guy who sucks and has proved that he sucks
over and over again.
and over again?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you tell your friend and you're like, what do you think I should do? And you're like, I already know what I should do.
Yeah. You're only asking because
you want them to
answer.
Be like, come on.
You want somebody else to tell you the answer.
Yeah.
Lastly, it improves relationships. So, like when you're in your own solitude, in my solitude, you're able to create your own opinions, your own belief systems, and
I feel like it just makes people value your opinion too, because you are so like, maybe not like headstrong and like stubborn per se, but just like, you know what you want for your life while still being open to others. And people value that. People are like, wow, like they're self-sufficient, they do what they want, know what they want, and never ask me what I think about a decision they're making, or rarely ask me. Like, maybe I can trust them to ask them a question when I need help.
Yeah.
And like, obviously that's going to improve your relationships with people when it's not like constant need, validate me.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, don't get me wrong. It's nice to be needed.
yeah.
But like,
There's balance.
there's such a balance there. Like, I feel like there's a difference between need, like wanting to be needed, and then like being needy. Like, you don't want to end up on the other side, you know?
And it totally goes hand in hand with boundaries. Like, if you're the person receiving a boundary or giving a boundary, I think you just like have to acknowledge that, like, if someone's setting boundaries, maybe it's just like time to sit with your own thoughts and feelings.
Yeah.
And value your alone time, because at the end of the day, everyone's just trying to be happy and fucking like get through it.
Yeah. I also think about how I can think of like two different, like not actual two different people, but like I can think of like two types of people, where one friend is probably like very self-sufficient to the point where like they never ask for help. They never
harmful.
And it's harmful. And then there's the other person who's like extremely needy and needs validation in every aspect. Yeah. And none of those are good. And you need to meet somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
And that just brings the thought up of like, when a person who's self-sufficient, not to like an extreme, and they ask me for help and they need me, it makes me feel like, oh, they trust me with this thing that, you know, that they need help with, or they trust me to be involved in some way or another. And that itself is like really special, versus like constantly needing to somebody to be there for somebody, you know?
Yeah. Or like never, and being like, oh my God, you just dumped all
of this shit on me. Exactly.
I didn't know you were going through all of that.
Yeah. So it's like, there's a fucking balance, but overall, being able to process on your own time and having your own opinions and being literally on your own will help you build your relationships, because people don't like to feel like weighed down with your problems.
Yeah. And that's fair.
Yeah.
Like, if you feel bad turning people down, it's fair to not want to carry the load of someone else's stuff. You got your own load.
Dude, for real. We just talked about in the last episode how setting and keeping boundaries is like the hardest thing in the world. And I think this is like very relevant in that conversation.
Yeah. And I think it's also just like being alone, like we said, is so much bigger than just like setting aside time to be by yourself physically. Like, you can't just be alone and be on your phone scrolling through TikTok and be like, yeah, I had like an hour of alone time last night. It's like, no, you burnt your eyeballs, your retinas are dead, you have a headache, you went to bed at 1 a.m.
Also, you heard from like 1,000 different voices.
Yeah, and you probably stressed about 8 million things you need to do now because you saw some video of it. And that's just like not alone time. That's not the point of it. The point is like recharging your brain and feeling confident in your own voice, I guess, and opinions. So
yeah, I think being alone is like very much about valuing yourself and like creating value in what you believe and what you feel like your opinions are and who you want to portray yourself as. Like, there's nothing more important than having a safe, stable, and secure inside before you go and meet people on the outside.
Because then you've had more time to back up your own thoughts so that if someone comes to you with a differing opinion, it's not just like...
it's not an attack.
It's like, not an attack, number one. And number two, it's just like, oh, I have reasons to back it. Like, this is just how I feel.
Yeah.
And I know that because I've sat with these feelings and thoughts and experiences to where I can like prove to you that this is just how I feel about whatever.
Yeah.
You just look like a stronger person. You know what I'm saying? Be alone.
Be alone, man.
Be alone. It's okay.
So your next phase.
Okay, yeah. So next phase.
The phase we're moving on in life.
The phase we're moving into is healing from exes. Yay. So much fun.
So yeah.
So like this phase, you know, we're just barely breaking the ice on her. But I feel like a lot of it just has to do with like letting go and forgiving not only them, but like myself for whatever it was, whether I did something wrong in the relationship or for staying as long as I did or whatever the fucking case, right? Feeling like I can't pick good people, feeling like I would rather be alone because I don't want my heart to be broken again, fear, and like all of those things that I think go into like like wanting to be in a relationship again. I think all of those fears come up, which I think is a good thing, because I think if you don't have these fears, something is maybe wrong and you haven't had enough time alone. Because I think if you're just like, yeah, I'm ready to get into another relationship, like right away or whatever, it's okay. Maybe it's not wrong, but I think if you don't have fears a little bit, like, ooh, like this is like uncharted territory again. Yeah. Or I don't know, like I'm not saying you need to be scared to get into another relationship.
Say, like, maybe it's like creating like
a healthy caution,
transmuting those fears into like caution, but not necessarily in like a fearful way, but just okay, no, scratch everything I just said. Transmuting those fears into just boundaries.
Maybe and that's the scary part. Like, can I set a boundary that?
Can I keep my boundary?
Can I trust myself?
Can I trust myself to keep that shit going?
Exactly. So I think that's the scary part. I think most people have been in relationships with past people that they did something wrong.
Like they deem shitty.
Or they deem shitty and like they should have set a boundary sooner or seen the red flags. Their picker was off, whatever the fucking case. And so you lose trust in yourself when you pick someone, quote unquote, bad for you. And I think that's like the major part of this phase. Like knowing that I would like to be in a relationship again with the right person and being thoughtful about it. And like, I thought I was thoughtful the last time.
It's always one more step, you know, like you hit a new peak like of it.
Leveling up every time. Yeah. And I just think I'm like, I don't know, like 22-year-old Sam, I guess was at the time, 23-year-old Sam, just so different from my mindset today. So like, I'm like, maybe there's no fear there. It's just, I have to put myself out there. And like,
that's what I was going to say, like the next phase is like practice. Like there's no way to know whether or not you're going to be able to keep your boundaries or keep yourself up to date without dating or like,
and I think
testing.
Our glowing hour segment is going to touch more on how I felt in relationships. And that's why I have to keep these strict boundaries about alone time, number one.
Yeah.
And everything else, just because it leads to codependency so fast for someone like me who wants to be with their partner all the time, loves doing the things they love doing, or just never wants to be bored and like is for the adventure. Like I want to say yes to everything. Like that does sound fun, but I'm drained inside. And like I just need like alone time.
The inner you is like screaming like, bitch, I need to fucking just relax.
Yes.
And then you're like, nope.
I'm like, but come on, it's a trip or it's a fucking day out. So yeah, I think I also just need a partner who's like on the same page with that. Like, I'm not going to invite you to every single thing because I know that you value your alone time and I value time with my friends or whatever the case.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's like having a partner who is going to understand that that's important and almost in general help you also set those boundaries or keep those boundaries up to date.
Bring me an emotionally aware man who appreciates alone time as well. Thank you.
Oh my god. Well, we'll see you in Glowing Hour where we talk about all of these fun things in partnerships.
Yay.
We're back with a
pomegranate Moscow Mule.
Delish. Okay.
Let's try it.
Fucking good.
It tastes like what you'd think. I will say I don't really love pomegranate in general, but this is nice.
I love pomegranate.
Really?
Yeah.
Is it good for your heart or something?
I think it's good. I think so. Like for your blood.
I'm like, did this cancel out? Double negative?
We're zeroed out.
Well, I guess it's a positive and a negative. Whatever. So again, we're going to be referencing this article, which, well, there's two, right?
Yeah, there's two.
Two articles from POOSH that we'll link in the notes.
There's some good information here.
Clearly.
The writers at POOSH doing the thing.
Whether you like Courtney or the Dashians, regardless.
So the way that this is going to go is we're going to talk about the ways in which if you don't have alone time in partnerships, it can lead into some difficulties.
Yes.
So the first one, it can lead to codependency.
Shocker.
Codependence is like an addiction, and there is no truly healthy partnership that contains this. It's a deep psychological reliance on a partner for every decision and activity, and even to share the same emotions. That part.
That's heavy.
While it's most common in caretakers of partners with illness or physical disadvantages, it can happen between two healthy people who have also crossed that line from besties to dysfunction.
That hits heavy.
The part where it's like about having the same emotions.
I mean, all of it really.
But
I just think it's a natural reaction to not having alone time.
Yeah, like
it's going to happen.
Because then you need like it's almost like that thing where we're talking about like validation from like your friends or whatever.
Yeah, you're getting it from that one person.
You're getting it from that one person about whether or not this decision about how you're spending this time needs to be like okayed with the other person. You know what I mean?
It goes past like venting and sharing. Fix me.
Dude.
Clearly we've both been in these situations, but I wonder, this is a good question to pose. Can you come back from codependency in a relationship?
I think it takes work.
Right.
And
I think
agreement. You think you can.
Okay.
An agreement between two people who are like, yeah.
We're being codependent.
We're being a little codependent. Let's move and take up a step back.
It has to be both, yeah.
Yeah. So I think like the rest of these are kind of just like symptoms of codependency also.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So the next one is an unspoken pressure. So it creates unspoken pressures. When we don't give our partners or ourselves room to breathe and grow, it puts pressure on us to be everything to each other. This can drive resentment as well as leave little room to excel in extracurricular hobbies, work, and other friendships. Very fucking true.
That hits.
So I feel like this is that type of relationship when like you're in high school and like the girl like leaves her besties for the entire year and then they break up and she's like, hey guys, like you guys want to go to the mall? And you're like, bitch, you haven't been around for the last year, so what the fuck?
Yeah.
You know? That's exactly what happens.
I feel like I've had the unspoken pressure as the one maybe like encouraging codependency in a past relationship. Not encouraging, but just like not stopping it, I guess. Like living through it.
Being an accomplice
to codependency. And I feel like it's always one-sided for me anyway. Like I feel like the pressure is on me to upkeep and have this like certain level of communication and trust and all this, but the other person doesn't have to, which I think maybe is like not
What do you mean like level of communication and trust?
So like this
like,
unspoken
elaborate.
pressure is like I feel the pressure to always be there for that person. And like if
because it seems like they don't have a support system
or whatever the case. Yeah.
Okay.
Or I just am like I need to be there for that person no
like
matter
you
what.
put the pressure on yourself.
Yes. And like I need to respond to a text message like as fast as I can. You know, within reason. Like I'm not saying I was literally like fucking cracked out next to my phone or anything. But like I don't know. Maybe some of it was like a healthy pressure that I was trying to just like get back from that other person. Mm-hmm. So I was like, when I'd go out, I'd be very like communicative and like tell them where I was going and blah, blah, blah. And then they wouldn't even respond to me.
Interesting.
And I'm like, why do I feel the pressure
to be
the
communicative,
what I want from a person?
There it is. That's a part.
Why do I feel the pressure to be the person I want, but they don't even fucking care when I do it?
Yeah.
Like, what?
Yeah.
I think that's like the unspoken pressure for me is that it's very like one-sided.
Yeah. And I feel like that is so like eye-opening because I feel like in past relationships I've had this like unspoken pressure because I was trying to meet the expectation of what I wanted from the other person.
Maybe that's it.
And that's maybe it but like also that's not healthy though.
Well, no, obviously not because they don't even want it.
But not only that,
or
is like they can't be, I think for this particular
alone time,
like, well, not the topic, but like for unspoken pressures, it's more so like the unspoken pressure is being everything for one person. And that's not realistic. Whether or not you want it, like I think
even what we wanted in this specific scenario, maybe not.
It was not like healthy.
Okay.
Specifically. But like, it's just like that's the unspoken pressure of like being everything to being one person to do all of these jobs is very fucking not realistic at all.
Right.
Like you don't want to be somebody's mommy.
Oh, no.
Their girlfriend, their best friend,
their wife,
their dad. You don't know.
Their dad.
Girl, I had nothing but daddy issue boys. So,
yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think there's another one that we'll wrap back to this.
All right. Next one is the lack of self-care. It can cause lack of self-care.
Which seems obvious.
Yeah. So it just says quality time together is important, but so is quality time with ourselves. With so much expectation to spend time with one another, we lose our sense of self-nurture, getting to fill our own cup and secure our own oxygen mask, so to speak. Building ourselves up, both physically and emotionally, is a pillar of learning how to love others in an open, accepting way.
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah.
I think we spoke on that pretty, like,
also like I think the whole aspect of self-care is like you should be wanting to do it for yourself. Let me start by saying that. But like when you have like taken care of yourself, you filled your own cup, then you can fill everybody else's cup.
Yeah.
Like there's not enough energy to go around if you're not literally like charging your battery, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like think about like a portable charger.
Okay.
Think about it this way.
Analogy.
You gotta charge that bitch before you charge anybody else, because if not, there's no battery in it.
It's not gonna charge nothing. Just plugged in for nothing.
You are the battery. You know what I mean? Anyway.
Yeah, I feel like that also just leads back into the relationships with other people.
Yeah.
You're not going to be connecting to fucking anyone if you can't connect to yourself. Like, bye.
That part.
You're just there. You're just existing.
At that point, you're just a mirror of everybody.
You're just reflecting.
A reflection. Versus just standing as yourself.
And then you start resenting people in your life because you're just reflecting back them, and you're like,
that isn't even me. Like, why am I so upset? Yeah. Going into that kind of a thing, we can become overcritical. With too much time together and not enough of that air cushion, we can become overly critical of the way our partner does virtually anything.
Oh, yeah.
Most of the time, this increase in criticism is actually one of the first signs that a partner needs space. Instead of starting a fight, take the cue and give some of that cushion back before coming together and having thoughtful, intentional communication.
I think that's a big one. I wish I had known that was the first sign. That would have probably saved me some time.
Yeah.
But honestly, I think it's so easy to start becoming critical of people you're always with. You're like,
I think like also naturally you're just like with this person so much that you notice every single small detail of life, and with like comparing your, because like it's almost like two minds blend as you think. Two minds blend as one. So then if you're not doing something in your particular way, it becomes like a critical moment to be like, well, I thought we did it this way. But it's like,
what do you mean?
What do you mean?
I'm my own person. I did it
and
that way.
You're like, no. You're not doing it right, you know?
And
or whatever
like,
it is.
Who says what's right or wrong? That part. Getting back in a relationship, I'm like, gotta deal with other people.
You really do.
It's literally the whole point.
But I think that's an important part.
What?
Of like what people don't realize in like getting into relationships. It's not only like dealing with other people, but it's mostly dealing with your fucking self.
Yeah.
It's like, yes, it's a partnership, but you need to deal with your fucking self first, bro.
It's like finding your person is so much work. Like, it's literally working on yourself and then working on yourself and then finding someone that you maybe like. You're like, yeah, they're cool to hang out with. Suss them out, didn't work out. And again, suss them out, didn't work out. Suss them out, didn't work out. Suss them out, it worked out. Oh my God, period. We work out. I like him. I love him. Blah, 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 blah. And then it's like, ooh, now I need to work on me.
While doing the working on us.
Exactly. It comes up. You're like,
But I think to simplify it, I think like working on yourself, obviously like not in a selfish fucking way where you're like, fuck you, I do whatever the fuck I want. It's more like, hey, I want to really take care of myself so that I have time to take care of you when I like get the chance to, when I want to. You know what I mean? Yeah. And wanting can be more often than not, you know? Also, and then the perfect partner should be somebody who is willing to accept the fact that you need these spaces, or they give you the availability to work on yourself. Next thing is your support system can dwindle. So this is like that situation that we just said where your friend is coming back after a long relationship that she ignored you through. Yeah. In a codependent relationship, oftentimes we forget we can also rely on friends and family to meet our emotional and tangible needs. Not only does that create the aforementioned pressure on our partners to fulfill every need, but it also creates a rift between friends and other relationships because we have not been available for them, nor have they had the opportunity to be available for us. Having shared activities and spending lots of quality time together is a beautiful part of a loving partnership. But just make sure to keep the time to love, nurture, and care for yourself and your friends as a gesture of support to strengthen your bond. It's
very hard when you get in a relationship to not want to spend time with them, especially when it's like new and you're in the honeymoon stage, whatever. I feel like that just has to end at a certain point. Like, there's a point where as a friend, I'm like willing to understand, you know? Like, if you're gone for like 6 months, a year maybe not a year, but like 6 months where you're just like, oh, we're going on a vacation, we're going here, we're going there, and like they just never have time for me. Okay, I'll hear you out for a second, and you still like are there for me in other ways, right? We just physically haven't hung out in a while. But then it like comes to a point where the friend is like, dude, all you do is spend time with them, which like I'm over it. Like, what the fuck? So I think there is like a very key balance to reminding yourself that when you are single, you still have the same support system. You actually added a person. So like, don't forget about all the people that have been there for you, all the other times you were bored or needed plans or whatever. Like, obviously, like I said, there's it's life and you have to figure out the new balance, but just like, don't forget that they're there for you still. You don't have to go to that person for literally everything, right?
Yeah.
You know?
I think what you said is super important of like when you're going into a relationship or starting a new relationship, a romantic relationship, it's just adding one new person to your life. There's still the multitude of people that you have,
everyone before,
your support system, and they each have their own job and their own piece of your heart. I, in the recent past, I talked to this one particular guy. I mean, not me, but like verbally I talked to somebody.
I was like, what do you mean?
who like believed that when in a relationship that these two people were like everything to each other and like they were two halves of a whole. And I completely disagree with that.
Yeah,
and I don't think anybody should think that way. Like you can... No. You are two individuals who love each other very much and have
created a whole life together.
A whole life together, but you guys are individually having your own ecosystems.
Yeah. Hopefully.
Yeah.
Ideally.
Yeah. But that's just fucking wild to me when people think that way.
It's just like, I get the sentiment. Like, they want to be
cute,
romantic.
whatever the fuck. No.
You're the half to my whole. Whatever the fuck people are saying these days.
No, it's verbatim. Something he said after was, I want to be the moon to her, like, tide. Like, being, like, controlling the tide. I'm like, did you just really, like, hear yourself?
Did you really?
Did you hear yourself? You just said you want to control somebody.
That's odd. That's a weird thing to say out
like
loud.
I want them to need me like he said I want them to need me like the moon needs the ocean, and I was like, what the fuck is your problem?
I'm like, I'm all here for an ocean symbolism, but
that ain't though.
That's not the one. Control me? Absolutely not. We're done with that. We're done with that one. That also just comes with the codependency shit. Yep. Like, you're so willing to be controlled in a codependent relationship because you're like, you're like, yeah, I'll do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Scary.
It's really scary. To end it on a note that we have some like conversations we've had about this before, but having no time alone in a partnership can lead to dull sexual bonds. Without crucial space, the margin for our own personal sexual energy is crowded out, which can dull even the steamiest of beginnings. It can dampen the Westermarck effect, a name for what is basically known as what prevents us from being sexually attracted to our siblings.
I hate that.
The idea is that when two people domestically cohabitate without enough space for individuality, they can reach a kind of familial desensitization to one another on a romantic level.
Okay.
The idea of being a unit is cute until you both lose the morsel of mystery. Cue the codependency.
I think that mystery part is important.
So important.
It's like, I've literally seen you do everything a human can do. I just need some space. And like, distance makes the heart grow fonder or whatever the fuck. It also makes your libido grow fonder, apparently. So if you are lacking in sexual bond with your partner, maybe surprisingly, you don't need to get away together. You need to get away with the girlies.
Just get away from them.
Get away.
No, but on a real note though, like I think like it said at the end, cue the codependency. Like once you're in a codependent relationship,
a trip with the girlies sounds scary.
Dangerous.
It's like, oh fuck, they're gonna convince me to do something, or my partner's gonna be mad because I didn't do something. The expectation that's unspoken is going in the back of your head. It's literally terrifying. You're like, y'all want to go to Vegas? But then he's going to go to Vegas without me. Or like...
Oh my God.
Yeah. Those were the thought patterns I had. Welcome to my brain.
I think that we perfectly like ordered like put this at the end, because I feel like this is like the
end.
The end goal.
You might not come back from this.
It's just more so like, I feel that...
I'm kidding, by the way. Sorry.
I feel like if you're like in these like codependent like ways, at least for like past relationships for each of us, at the very end of like dealing with codependency and the unspoken pressures and the lack of self-care and like losing relationships because we're so intertwined in this one relationship, it then like creates this space in our head of like, am I even like, are you even attractive to me anymore? Is this just like a bit that I'm doing?
Like, am I in control of my own life? Like, do I think you're attractive?
Exactly. Or are you telling me?
Tell me that you're attractive because of X, Y, and Z.
Period.
Because you pull bitches or whatever.
Yeah.
Ew.
So, and also just to say that, like, if you're having sexual intimacy issues with your partner, this does not mean
That's
that
different.
you have the rest of this going on.
Yeah, it's different.
It's just more so that I feel like these things then cause such a turmoil where, like, the sexual bond is not broken, but at least it's, like I said, it's dulling down.
I think there's a difference in the root cause.
Yeah.
Because, like, this is saying the root cause is you never spend time apart. That's the root. Not just if you have the symptom of a dull sexual bond, like you said. That could be from a million other things that are resolvable or things you can work through. But this part, like, if you're codependent and you're at the point where you're like, am I attracted to you? Do I even want to sleep with you? Like, are you my brother at this point? Like, are we just roommates, you know?
The roommate, right, yeah.
That's when I think it's like, I don't know if it's salvageable.
Yeah.
Like, y'all have just spent too much time together.
Homie? Like, we're just going to hang out today.
So, if you are single or in a relationship and you feel like you are not intentionally spending time alone, this is your wake-up call. It's a new year, baby.
A new year.
A new you.
Time to start some new habits.
Exactly.
One little excerpt I did want to read. I feel like it really hit the spot.
Okay.
So it says, by switching up the narrative and seeing alone time as desirable and enjoying the quiet for reflection and the pleasure of being you receive many benefits on many levels. The biggest being your relationship to yourself sets the tone for all others in your life. How you feel about being with yourself and the inner climate you cultivate draws you to every single relationship and experience in your life, for better or for worse. It all begins with you. So then again, creating your own, like, inner ecosystem, inner dialogue, just your inner being.
Yeah.
Really cultivating that and, like, building her, him, or them up will only allow for you to go out into the world and present yourself as exactly who you want to be.
Yeah, I also think it's...
And if you're lacking that, you're gonna just...
attract the wrong person.
Attract the wrong people. Attract the wrong energy. Be lost in the sea of people.
No purpose.
Purposeless, yeah.
If you can't be present with yourself, who are you? What are you doing?
That's really it. Like, who are you? What do you want to do?
Think about it. Who do you want to be? Who do you want to be present with when you're alone? Like, it's honestly awful when you have bad days, because you have bad days and you're just sitting there and you're an anxious fucking wreck and you don't know how to soothe yourself. Like, those are the hard days, truly. And I think maybe that's something we should talk about. The hard part of finally getting comfortable with being alone with your thoughts, feelings, and seeking validation and, like, wanting all of those things. Because it's fucking hard.
Yeah.
To be like, I could just text someone, or I could just get on Instagram, or I could get on a dating app, and it's like a quick fix. But instead, I could just sit here and think and journal, like, or whatever.
Yeah. I think also, like, aside from, like, dating, just, like, if you have a bad day, I think it's easier to say that you want to be alone, but you're really just making yourself lonely. You know? So it's, like, learning to be alone in times of joy, in times of, like, being neutral versus punishing.
Which maybe
yourself.
That's what makes the bad days easier.
Which is the punishment. It's like a codependency with...
What do you mean?
Do you know what I'm saying?
You're saying, like, being alone is no bad?
No. I feel like there's, like, also an art to, like, the being alone aspect of, like, not only wanting to be alone when you're hurting or upset or sad.
Yeah.
Like, because then that's not necessarily being alone. I mean, you are alone physically. You're, like, but you're also, like, limiting yourself from... You're in that lack mentality of isolation and wanting to, like, self...
I guess I'm thinking more of, like, when, like, a bad day of being alone where, like, you just physically, I guess, are lonely in that moment.
Oh, versus, like, intentionally being
alone. So, like, when you're feeling lonely, I think being alone is, like, being alone makes being lonely easier.
Yeah.
And, like, what goes through your head when you're feeling lonely,
right.
It's a lot easier to soothe and validate yourself and be like, actually, I'm going to turn this loneliness into just being alone.
And enjoying the moment.
And being like, I actually am going to be like, wow, I don't have any commitments or responsibilities to anyone right now.
Yeah.
Except me.
Yeah.
So maybe that's
also it.
so much nuance to
Too much
being
nuance
alone.
to being alone, bro.
That's today's episode. And next week, we're talking about Nick Vile's book, which has to do a lot with relationships and dating and boundaries and all of that fun stuff. So you have a week. Yeah.
One more week
to finish, and we'll probably have some polls up or something to get your
Instagram,
opinions, about the book or just some of the topics. So see you guys then.
Bye.